Okay, I am going to do a little review over Chapter P, just a video that if you needed more from what you got in class, this would help you. Remember with this quiz, it's going to be a live quiz. You have to show your face and you have to submit it within the time that I give you. So any questions on that, make sure you ask. So first thing, one of the first things we did was interval notation and relate it to an inequality. Inequality, remember, uses less than, greater than, less than or equal, greater than or equal. Interval notation uses parentheses and brackets. So you have to remember which is which. If I said inequality for this one, this graph, you would have x's greater than or equal to 4. If I said interval notation, it's really easier. It left to right, it starts at 4, goes to infinity, has a bracket because it's a bracket. If I gave you this one, inequality would be -5 less than x less than or equal to 1. If it was an interval, parentheses -5 to 1. And remember, this could have been a closed dot. This would have been an open dot. So it can either be the dots on the lines or the parentheses and the brackets. Exponent properties. So we did this, we talked about it. Just seeing this example, see parentheses, you distribute. So that'd be 2 to the third, x to the 6, because I multiply, y squared, x cubed, y to the 4th. I'm going to say I would do 2 cubed, 8. My x is 6 minus 3, x cubed. 2 minus 4 would be -2, but then that would move down. So your answer would be 8x cubed over y squared. So we should know exponent properties. Third thing, solve quadratics algebraically. So if it says algebraically, I better see your work. How you choose to do this, quadratic formula, factoring square roots if you can, complete the square. Most people with this problem would probably, this first one, do the quadratic formula. So opposite of b, plus or minus b squared minus 4 times 2 times -9, 4ac, all over 2a. So then do what's underneath that radical. So you get out your calculator. Don't put in the radical. I don't want decimals. I want reduced radicals. So if I do 5 squared minus 4 times 2 times -9, I get 97. So that's the square root of 97 over 4. That does not reduce. I'm done. If it did reduce, reduce it. If I gave you this one, I would try to factor. Doesn't work. You could complete the square. I would probably do the quadratic formula again. Opposite of b, plus or minus b squared minus 4 times 1 times 5, all over 2 times 1. I think I gave this one to see that 144 minus 20 is 124. Make sure you reduce that. Sorry. what goes into 124 is probably 16. 124 divided by 16, no. 124 divided by 4, 31. So negative 12, this is radical 4 and 31. So I'd have 2 radical 31 over 2. Then if I look at all my outside numbers, they're divisible by 2. So I'd have negative 6 plus or minus 1 radical 31 over 1. So quadratic formula definitely have knowledge of. Solve graphically. You guys can use Desmos or you can use a graphing calculator. I'm showing with a graphing calculator, but if it says graphically, no work. So I would have the absolute value of 4 minus 3x. And then I would do this one probably intersections. So I'm going to do y equals and y equals. And I graph that. And my picture is here. So where does the V equal the line? And with my calculator, it's, as we said, harder than it is with your Desmos. But negative 0.33 or negative 1/3. And then second trace number 5, move closer to the second one, enter, 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 and you get 3. So x equals, if I gave you this one, same thing, I'm not doing any algebra, but now I'm going to do zeros. So where does it equal 0? So I just have 1 y equals. So I'm going to put in x to the 3rd plus x squared plus 2x minus 3. I'm going to graph it. And looking at that picture, there appears to be 1, 0. So this is when I'm doing left bound, right bound, round to 3 places, 0.844. Just be careful you investigate if you're not sure if it's equal to 0. So when you're solving equations, x equals. So then the last thing, inequalities. So same thing with this one. The only one that I would even think about doing with intersections would be absolute value. But I do think inequalities are easier with zeros. So if I subtracted 6 and I want to think, where is this greater than means above 0 is the x-axis. So if I put that in my calculator, and I'm going to do it, the way I usually do it is I draw a little sketch. So math number, absolute value, 7x minus 3, arrow out of that, minus 6, graph it. So again, you need more explanation with this. Where is it above the x-axis? That part, that part. It's 2 separate parts. So what that means is you're going to have 2 intervals, because I ask you to use interval notation. So you find that 0 and that 0. Me just sort of knowing what that 0 is going to be, This is like 9/7, which, if I have my calculator, I think you'd get this to be 1.286. And then the other one, -3/7, I think, -0.429. So think left to right. At negative infinity, is it above the x-axis? Yes, because that would be way over here. It's above the x-axis. So negative infinity until I get to -0.429. No equal sign, all parentheses. Union, when does it start again being above the x-axis? 1.286 to infinity. So this one, I'm going to subtract 4 first. X squared minus 4x minus 1 is less than 0. So this is going to be below the x-axis. So I get out my calculator. I put in x squared minus 4x minus 1. I graph it. And if you think of this picture, where is it below the x-axis? There. Well, that's one part, one inequality. You find those zeros. Takes me a little bit longer. Left bound, right bound. That's -0.236. The other one is and remember, if it, like on a graphing calculator, it says, mine says 1e -12. That's 0. So that's 4.236. So when is it less than 0? It starts being less than 0 at -0.236. It stops being less than 0. And I use parentheses because no equal sign. So then, I mean, this would be the exact same way. It's set, it's ready to go. This would be greater than. I mean, you know, I could keep doing lots of these, but I think you get the idea. 9x squared, whatever. 9x squared plus 12x minus 1. I would have to find those zeros, but again, and I'm not going to do this, but you find these two zeros. When is it above? Because greater than. It's two separate parts, two inequalities. Always when you're doing it, think at negative infinity, is it? Yeah, way over here with the x, it would be up there somewhere. So negative infinity until I got to that first 0. I would put a bracket because it's got the equal sign. Union, the second 0, whatever that 0 is, to infinity. So I think with this last one, the only thing that is different is possibly, if I put one of these on there, make sure you're careful. This one is 8x. I mean, it doesn't matter if there's a cube, whatever. Clear that out. 8x minus 2x cubed minus 1. If I graph that, there's three, it's a cubic. So if I look at this picture and just me sort of, sorry, trying to get my answer, less than 0, below the x-axis. So you think, well, trace your graph from left to right. The first part is above. This part is below. This part is above. Two separate parts. So if I think left to right, first, second, third, 0. This would be the first 0 to the left. To the second 0, it's below. Union, the third 0, which is the one to the right, to infinity. So I'm just not taking the time to get those. So hopefully that helps if you needed any extra work or assistance.